University, and he has an experience in working in the Supreme Court as an advocate and various other high courts of all the states across the country. Mr. Rai is a depth interpreter of law and has various landmark judgments to his credit. During his long career, Mr. Rai has uh, been the briefing counsel for the ASGs of the country on behalf of Union of India and has briefed many senior counsels. Further, he also holds expertise in the fields of arbitration. Also, I have been associated with him, which has increased my knowledge in the field of uh, law manyfold, and it's an asset which I always value and treasure the most. I thank you, sir, for your able guidance, and I extend a very warm welcome to you in this lecture on behalf of myself and all other participants. Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot, Nitesh. Thanks, Itakshi. Thanks, Shivani. Nitesh, can you hear me?
Yes, you can start, sir. You can start.
Yes. So, the first of all, I must congratulate you guys for doing such a tremendous job by organizing these kinds of informative webinars. The webinar today is again a very informative one, and I think that this is one of the steps towards access to justice. As you guys, by promoting the information, is promoting the legal health. Like in medicine, it is said that prevention is better than cure. So if we have a better information for everyone, even the litigants and even the entrepreneurs, there is a chance that the disputes are to be avoided or it can be contained. Now, despite all this, the chances of dispute is always there. So we always explore the authoritative dispute resolutions. The authoritative dispute resolutions, though there are a lot, but what as a lawyer or as a litigant we are looking for is which is having a least cost, and it is time tested, having a good efficacy. The results are there, and there is also the results has to be very clear within short time. So before going on the main topic, that how to actually strategize for post lockdown or post COVID, we'll first have a look at what are the options that are available with us when we are going for recovery of money. Year old, and it is known to every lawyer, is the summary trial. Summary trial is in the CPC the oldest one, and there are certain limitations to it, like it has to be in a promissory note, it has to be in hundis or bill of exchange, or there has to be a clear written contract, and you cannot claim the interest. But the provisions of Order 37 CPC was in such a way that it was devised to give the speedier justice. When you have a clear-cut money that you owe, in those cases, there is the Order 37 that can be exercised. Now, as far as 37, let us see why. To my opinion, in the books, it is very clear that Order 37 is better than an ordinary suit. But my experience is otherwise. Why I am saying so is we have we know that in Order 37, first there has to be once the notice is issued, after that the other side has to enter the appearance within 10 days. So that is the first provision for a speedy trial. Normally, the other side in 80 to 90% cases appear and enters the appearance also. If the other side enters the appearance, then the problem is that leave to defend and all those things are to be there. So once the party has appeared, or even if it has appeared late and shows good cause, and there is a condonation, then the next step is the application of leave to defend, serving summons of judgment. Then there is a final adjudication or hearing by the and final adjudication by the judge. And once it is admitted, again I am saying 80 to 90% of the cases, the leave to defend is admitted as the defendant is able to show some kind of defense in his favor. And once there is some defense in his favor, then the court has to exercise its right in such a way that the party should be heard. It cannot be the party should be, the matter should be decided unheard. So in that circumstances, the suit is converted to ordinary suit. Now, once it is converted to ordinary suit, it's not that there is immediately issues are framed and the trial is there. What happens is then there is the next step for the written statement, and another 30 days or 90 days elapses on that. So what I have seen that normally if the court is very fast, it's 8 to 9 months, though there are some courts and there are the certain judges even in high court also, when the summary suits are filed, when you are able to establish a prima facie case, then the defense is conditional. Say they will be asked to deposit some amount, some money is to be deposited there, then after that the suit will be contested. But then that money which is deposited is not actually going in the pocket of the plaintiff. It remains, it is deposited in the court, and the matter continues. After 9-10 months, the written statement is filed. So I prefer that it's better, rather than going for leave to defend and taking a chance for 9 to 10 months, it's better to go for an ordinary suit. Now in ordinary suit, prior to 2002, there had been lot of delays. Like immediately the suit was filed, there were interrogatories which were filed by the matter was without written statement was prolonged for a long time. So there was amendment in 2002 in CPC, and it was seen that written statement, and it was an amendment that written statement is to be filed within 30 days. If not in 30 days, within 90 days, if it is not filed, then there was no chance of condoning it. Then there came the interpretation, the filing of the cases before the various courts regarding that for condoning the 90 days. Initially, there were few judgments of the Honorable High Court and Supreme Court that said that the judges do not have a discretion to condone 90 days. But later on, the law was settled on this also, that even if there is a delay, the written statement will be taken. But in any way, what we have seen is if it is beyond 90 days, then the court imposes a cost, and somewhere there is a general bearing in the mind of the lawyers as well as the litigants, the defendants, that the written statement is to be filed at earliest. So that way 8 to 9 months is saved in one way. The other is if it is a money suit and the lawyer is smart enough, then he understands what to cross-examine. And though the defense will try to create a lot of hurdles and also for delaying the matter, but as far as the delay is concerned, if you are smart enough, I have seen the cases where 3, 3, 4, 4 witnesses are examined a day. Actually, those witnesses are just for delaying it. So as a lawyer, we should understand those witnesses are not material witnesses. So immediately, since the right of being heard and proper defense is to be given, that is the limitations of the court also. So we should immediately accept this and cross-examine them. If it is required to ask questions, otherwise immediately just get the examination done and the post the matter for the orders. Then the third, for in the advent to have more speedier justice, the third option which came in is the commercial suits, which is again forming, and there is not much clarity and there is not much application of this, but in high courts the lawyers are very trying to effectively use it. And once the admission denial is done, there is a provision that the matter is to be decided within 6 months. So these are the provisions which is available in the courts, and in all these cases there has to be a trial. Now there are certain tribunals also where we file for recovery of money. The difference between court and tribunal is under a special enactment. So under a special enactment we can understand that the procedure adopted is entirely different, and in most of the cases it is a summary trial where there is no cross-examination, at maximum evidence is given, like in consumer courts, in arbitration, then in NCLT also. This is all summary trials. So as far as the summary trial is concerned, there the justice is clear. It is the amendments also. Let us sample the Arbitration Act. Arbitration, there has been earlier, you all know that the relevant section is that section 7 has to be there to invoke the arbitration, as then the foremost requirement is that there has to be a written contract between the parties. That is one thing. And after that, if the appointment of the arbitrator is an issue, then obviously there is an issue regarding the parties do not mutually agree for the appointment of the arbitrator. Then in that situation, the section 11 is there for appointment of the arbitrator from the court, and then section 9 is there where there is a interim measures for all this. So arbitration is one where the disposal is faster, and with the insertion of section 29 says that all the arbitration are to be decided within 12 months. If it is not decided within 12 months, then it has to be with the mutual consent of the parties. Another 6 months is given. But if within next 6 months also, like after 18 months also, the parties do not, the arbitrator is not able to decide, and the parties are not have not concluded their arguments, then the leave of the court is required. One has to apply before the court, and the court's discretion is there whether to allow it or not. So there some kind of a kind of obstacle is put for those who are trying to delay it, and it is being followed strictly, and we see that it is a very speedier. But however, one thing is there, because of the high fees and all that, for small money matters it is not that advisable. But if there is a contract and there is an arbitration agreement, only one has to go for it. Otherwise, for high value matters, it is a very efficacious remedy. Then there is NCLT. Though in NCLT, it is the matter is to be the mandate of the IBC is not to recover money under any of the provisions, but actually it has been very effective in recovering the money. Once there is a clear due and there is no previous dispute is existing between the parties, then in those cases, section 9 is invoked for the operational creditors. The operational creditor can file the claim before the tribunal, and the tribunal then decides it, and thereafter, if it finds that the claim is very clear, then the IRP is appointed and the entire company goes into insolvency proceedings. So there the sound company, if and in the most of the cases a sound company will never, for a small amount or for recovery of the amount which actually is due, will go in insolvency. So they immediately try to settle the matter, which is the most speedier one. Now we are seeing nowadays that the IBC is also to be suspended, what the government has said, but the laws are and the notification is not yet clear. But there was an announcement. Let's see what happens there. So these are the options which are available for recovery of money. Now, we have also, along with that, we can have a chat that is negotiable in fact, and then we can conclude proceedings along with this. There is a breach of trust under 406 420. Now coming, that is pre-COVID and post-lockdown, post-lockdown. Pre-lockdown, all these remedies, as we have discussed, is available. Now, post lockdown, there is lot of confusion because of the government notifications, because we all have heard of the force majeure clause. There is the certain interpretation by the judges also regarding the notifications of the government. Few notifications and few interpretations of the government will be taking, so that we understand where we will be leading to post COVID and what will happen to the dues, which is period of lockdown. One is force majeure. Force majeure is something, if we simply say, the force majeure is that it is an event or an effect that can neither be anticipated nor be controlled. So this is one of the big concerns for the entrepreneurs, for the creditors, for the business owners. On one side, there is a lockdown, so there is production is stopped altogether. Then there is wages which is to be paid. There is another notification which was by the Ministry of Home Affairs. And obviously the other hardships like supply chain is broken, and all those issues are definitely there. So force majeure is to be interpreted in those cases. I mean, recently a judgment has also been delivered by Justice Pratibha Singh, though it was related to a rent control matter. But there was a clarity in that order with respect to that force majeure cannot be in each and every case. There has to have a proper agreement between the parties. When even after there is an agreement between the parties and there is a force majeure clause in it, and the clause, again, it is not saying anything about pandemic or anything about lockdown, still somewhere we as a lawyer feel that if it is disease, it is an act of God. So somewhere the courts will interpret in that way, and that force majeure defense will be available to the certain debtors. But recently in the Mumbai High Court has passed an order in which it has clearly said that force majeure is not something to resile the contract. Maybe during the lockdown one cannot perform or one could not perform, but that could not be the reason why the entire contract is to be scrapped, and that could not be the defense. So somewhere, though, these are the video conferences and hearings which is for a very short duration, but we can somewhere understand where the court, the way the court is going to interpret these matters. Now, once is force majeure, the other is that if suppose force majeure is not there and the money is to be recovered, is there any other way what the defense the debtor can take? The other defense that the debtor can take is Section 56 of the Contract Act. Section 56 of the Contract Act is regarding the impossibility of performing the contract. Even if there is no force majeure clause in that, then also the court, the debtor might go for this, invoke the Section 56 and say that the performance was not possible, as there was a lockdown, there was complete restriction on the movement of the goods and the humans. So that defense is also to a certain extent sustainable. Now coming to the certain notifications which the government has issued, and how it is working and what is the intention, or is there any change which is going to take place, or legislation is or some act is to be made on this post-COVID issues of money recovery. So one notification where we have seen that RBI is coming and deciding and has declared that the has provided moratorium for the payment of the installments for 3 months, which is again extended up to August 31st. So this is one relief which has gone to the debtors, but this is only where the person has taken a loan from the bank. So, but the intention is there that the government somehow wants to give the relief because of the disruption of services and loss of job and the recession in economy and loss of production, etc., etc. The second notification, which has been very much in issue and in has been discussed a lot and was recently in May, and around on 19th May, it was withdrawn by the government, was regarding the payment of the wages of the workers. I say that the payment of wages of the workers should be paid, but then at the same time we should not be so disconcerted about how these businesses are doing. When the supply chain is broken, when the money is not coming, when the production is not there, and the migratory workers are moving to their home because of whatever reasons, how is it possible to pay the wages? The government should have gone for some kind of should have devised a method how the payment could be made. We also analyzed that, but in any way on 29th May, 29th of March, there was a notification by the government where it clearly stated that if wages is not paid, then there will be some action which will be taken. Though it is not very clear, but if we read the notification which was issued under the Disaster Management Act and the states where they issue under the Epidemic Diseases Act, the government cannot issue such kind of notifications to the private employers. It can issue to the government authorities and its agencies, but it to the private employers. So this is one factor where after the notices, the advisory we are issued, we are again saying to the employers that this is advisory. But yes, do pay if you are capable of paying, but still there cannot be any action as this is an advisory only. Despite this, the states have issued some orders. Then there was litigation in this. The Honorable Supreme Court initially did not. It issued notice, and the learned ASG was to respond. But on the next date of hearing, before the response, there was proper nobody appeared from the Union of India, and then the matter was the Union of India finally withdrawn that notification. Fine. That notification is withdrawn and the wages are paid, and the employers, to a lot of employers have talked, they are committed to pay. But then there has to be some way where they can recover this money. If the government is not ready to pay, there is one act where we have analyzed is the ESI. ESI is where a petition can be filed, a complaint can be filed before the consumer court, either by the employee or the employer to recover wages, because there is a surplus in the ESI. It's around 9,094,000 crores, something like that. And it is an organization which is to look after the welfare, and it has invested the entire amount in bonds and the FDs. So it has become a profit making unit. So if we say that this is in the crisis, this is an employer and employees contribution. So here the amount should be paid by the ESI. So this is one way where some kind of relief can be given to the employers in the current lockdown and all that, despite there has been one more notification for the struggling businesses, which was by the Union Finance Minister, which was that during the debts during the COVID period, if it is unpaid, the IBC will not be attracted. Then there was a suspension of IBC for 1 year, and the minimum threshold for initiating IBC was raised from 1 lakh to 1 crore, and so these measures, which is still the government says that they will be bringing they will be describing it and bringing the exact ways and the factors how it is to be implemented. But this is what the intention of the government is, some way to save the economy and save the manufacturers. But here again, I feel that this is not going to solve the problem, because what will happen, what the dues are, we all understand that there is a supply chain, right? Some goods is produced, some goods is sold, some amount is recovered, some amount is balanced. If the goods are not again given to the party is not able to pay the further amount, and then slowly it becomes a doubtful debt and it becomes a bad debt. So we have to be very clear that pre-lockdown, soon the things normalize, there has to be some kind of action on this side. And keeping in mind the force majeure, I have already discussed the force clause, certain interim measures and certain judgments which are there. Let us analyze those judgments and see where we will be leading to once the lockdown is over, and we'll be fighting the court for recovery of the money. So one is the on force majeure, that is Standard Retail Private Limited versus Messrs GS Global Corp and others, Bombay High Court. So this is where the honorable bench has stated that in any event the lockdown would be for a limited period, and the lockdown cannot come to the rescue of the petitioner so as to resile from its contractual obligations with the respondent of making payment. Now the payment has to be made. Somewhere it is said that maybe during this lockdown period some hardship is there, so that will be seen, and this is one of the judgments post lockdown or during lockdown. The other is that Ramanand and others versus Dr. Girish Soni, which is just decided by the Honorable Court by Justice Pratibha Singh, which in detail has talked about the Contract Act. It has in detail talked about the transfer of property, where the petitioner has gone for the suspension of the rent during the COVID period, as the rent was not paid and the eviction orders were passed. So the court has opined on the Contract Act is that the court said that in the realm of the contracts, the respective rights and obligations of the parties were determined by the terms and conditions of the contract itself. Thus, if there was no contract at all, or if there is no specific force majeure clause, then the issue would have to be determined on the basis of the applicable law, the court said. Hello?
Can you repeat the last line because you were not audible?
Yeah. So it says that if there was no contract at all, or if there was no specific force majeure clause, then the issues would have to be determined on the basis of the applicable law, the court said. And it further says, like we were discussing about section 32 and 56 of the Indian Contract Act, it says that even if the force majeure clause is not there, so the remedy is available, but then we have to go for those remedies rather than invoking the force majeure. It says that the court said that in circumstances such as the outbreak of pandemic like the current COVID-19 outbreak, the grounds on which the tenants, lessees or other similar situated parties could seek waiver or non-payment of the monthly amounts under the contracts which have a force majeure clause was governed by section 32 of the Indian Contract Act. Section 56, which deals with the impossibility of performance, would apply in cases where a force majeure event occurred outside the contract, and the same did not apply to lease of agreements. So it is saying that it is not in the lease of the agreement, and otherwise it will apply section 56 if there is no such agreement. There is another issue which was dealt was Transfer of Property Act also in this. So in this background, one thing, let us decide, the time is really tough, and for the lawyers, for almost 2 to 3 months, the courts are closed. We never have heard of lockdown, never imagined about it, and see what is happening. And we are still waiting, and the courts are yet to open. But definitely, the things are going to be better, and the prevailing situation, that is, we are going to overcome, and the future will be always better than what the present is. Before the closing of this topic and taking up the questions, I have a thought for you all, and let us understand, for the public, for the litigants, for the business, for the entrepreneurs. We always see the law, it is a duty imposing. Is it really so? Is it duty imposing, or is it enabling, or it is a power conferring? I leave up to you, and think about it and see that law enables us, it confers power, or it is just a duty imposing. Thank you. Nitesh.
I request all the viewers to take, if their questions are there with them, any questions for the subject can be taken up. They may kindly put it in the chat box, and our moderator Shivani would ask it. Shivani, if you have lined up some questions, you can start asking, sir.
Sure. There are a few questions already, sir.
Yes,
the first question
please.
is, sir, that means earlier in general contracts or rent agreements, there were no force measures clauses are there. So now that shall be done from here onwards, question mark, as
Right.
as stated by the High Court in DRC petition. This is the first question, sir.
Right. Yeah, Shivani, as far as force majeure is concerned, we see normally lease agreements. These are not very lengthy agreements. In the commercial contracts, this is always mentioned, but in the lease agreement, it is not mentioned. So yes, of course, herein after post lockdown and in this scenario, it has to be like in every agreement, this force majeure will be added, and I think this particular clause will also be inserted with the words like lockdown, like pandemic, like the no human movement or the goods movement. In those cases, there is an impossibility. So that is one of the things that will be there. Otherwise, if it is not there, as of now, what we can see is the interpretation is left to the court, and the court will decide whether it was impossible or not. Yes.
Okay, sir. And the second question is, how far is the effect of the recovery process? How much the defense would be available to the defendant in a simple recovery case if he says
Right.
that since due to pandemic we suffered losses and we don't have money to pay?
Right.
That is the second.
See, as we have discussed earlier also, the situation is for both the creditor as well as debtor. Somewhere the courts will see into it and strike a balance on this. It is very clear that if some services is provided or some goods has been given pre-lockdown, the court should be or may decide on this that nothing doing, that the amount has to be paid. Maybe some kind of concessions can be given in the form of interest or not, and the other thing. And the post-lockdown also, I don't think that the entire amount what is due. I think that post-lockdown for businesses there has been total disruption. So there will be very fewer kind of recoveries that will be there. But even if it is there, the court will consider, and I think there has to be some balance that is to be struck between the creditor and the debtor.
Yes, sir. Another question is from Zoya Mehta. She asks,
Right.
when the employers are not clearing the salaries of the employees and over and above they are sitting on
Right.
huge fundings which they have procured earlier,
Right.
should we as lawyers of these employees move against these companies under the insolvency provisions?
See, this one notification is there. What I was discussing by the finance minister, which is may come to the rescue of those if you go for IBC, the payment of wages. It says that debts regulated related to the coronavirus pandemic will not be included in default. So this may include the wages also. That is what I fear about. And the second thing is that the IBC is suspended for almost a year. That order is also
Right.
the finance minister has stated
Ordinance
it.
has been passed and it has been challenged.
Yes, yes. Let's see what the details is. That will also be of a help to the business owners.
So don't you think that the government ignoring its own notifications post 18th May, also the reason Honorable Supreme Court ruling interpreting the 29th March notification of MHA has been the employers undue power? That's another question by the same participant, Zoya Mehta.
Shivani, the last line I could not hear. What you said is, can
Yes,
you repeat, please?
From 29 March notification of MHA has given the employers undue power, question mark.
Right. No. How it has given the employers an undue power? See, we have been analyzing all this. Let us understand, we have to, because employers are not our enemy. They are running our country. They are the backbone of our country. So let us understand, if the production is not there, there is no work going on, from where the employers are going to give, and what the government has so far given. There is a declaration that this is the package and this will be given, but there is no disbursement at all. And despite this, I have met certain employers and I know they treat the workers as a family. On the contrary, some kind of confusion has been created. Certain workers who do not have any sympathy for the employer, they are not even going for the work also, and they are demanding the salary. And even once the 33% was opened, they said that we will not be going because we are scared of this pandemic. So they are right also, but if there is no production and no money coming, no recoveries are there, how these employers are going to pay? It is the government which has to look into. One is that why don't we pay from the ESI this thing? And I have seen that the employers, if they have to continue their business and they don't pay the workers will never return. So somehow they are trying to pay them, but they have the hardship. Let us understand.
Okay, sir. So another question is the direction of MHA upon statutory provisions until and unless the law is not amended will be mandatory, question mark.
Right. If we analyze these two acts, see, lockdown is under the act of this national, this is Disaster Management Act. The notification by MHA to and the direction to the states that it should give the direction to the employers or the industry owners that they should pay to the workers is under this act. Now this act, there is the provision which is there is, my interpretation to it is actually not a kind of, it do not empower, or it cannot, the Union of India cannot give any mandatory order. It can only issue advices. So advisory was issued and the states acted on it. Let us see what in future happens, but as of now, there is no law where the direction can be given. Yes, there is an Industrial Dispute Act which talks about that 45 days layoff period. If within 45 days the wages are, the work is suspended, then 45 days salary is to be given. But then also that is with the rider. If you read that section, we'll be very clear about it that the employers are not going to be liable there also. If they are laying off and paying 45 days salary and the workers are less than 100, they do not have to take permission from the government authorities. More than 100, they have to take permission. But then again, there is a provision which says that in these kinds of hardships, the layoff can be there.
So while discussing the defense under Section 56 of the Contract Act for doctrine of frustration, would it also not be seen whether the time is a sense of the contract or not before deciding the liability of any of the parties? Question mark.
Doctrine of frustration, yes, that is impossibility and all that. Of course, the government is sensitive about it, and of course the issue has to be seen in such a way that debtor do not enjoy unfettered power, as well as the creditor somewhere is not at a loss. So there will be interpretations, there will be a lot of litigations on this, what I understand. And you see, today after the lockdown, most of the businesses, many businesses or the industries are on the verge of close down. You see the aviation, you see the there's a very big hotel, yeah. Then there is the restaurant business, then the gym business and all that. The rent is to be paid, the huge salaries to be paid. So there is a lot of layoff is going on there. So it is to be seen that from that perspective.
Thank you, sir. Another question is, have the provision of Order 37 become obsolete after enactment of Commercial Court Act?
See, on papers it is not, but if you see as a practicing lawyer, I will say that not in, even before the coming of the Commercial Courts Act, then also this summary suit was not that effective, because in most of the cases leave to defend is granted. I'm afraid, I'm sorry to say this, but in each and every case, because that rule is being followed, that the defendant has the right to be heard, and only on the deposit the trial is continued, and then the written statement and all that. So yes, of course, the commercial, but then the Commercial Courts Act has certain limitation, because it cannot be filed in each and every case. There is a definition what are the commercial transactions which can be only filed there. So there only you can take the benefit of the Commercial Courts Act. Otherwise, the summary procedure is still there. But I'm seeing that it is not being used that much.
Sir, another question is by Shobhit Mahant. He says, is the consumer who have purchased a flat from builder, but builder is not giving back the money or possession, can the consumer file consumer court case or file a proceeding with official creditor with the IRP?
Yes, that is already there. See, Section 7 of IBC is very clear about it. The Supreme Court has passed a judgment, and it has held that the borrowers, the allottees, where they have not received, they have not got the houses, that is, they are the financial creditors, and under Section 7 they can move. But then now another amendment has come that there has to be minimum 100 which has to be there. Apart from this, the consumer forum is also there where they can file, and then there is a RERA is also there where this issue can be taken up.
So last question is by Advocate Zoya Mehta. She's asking, what are the remedies under various laws for recovering the money dues? Could you please summarize?
What are the remedies? Yeah. See, we can categorize in two. One is the remedies which are available with courts. For lawyer, normally we say that all are courts, but there is a difference between court and a tribunal. And there are certain remedies which are with the court. There are certain remedies which are with the tribunal. Now, tribunal, which we say, what is the tribunal is, which is under a special, is made under a special enactment. And the court is where the proper trial is there. So one is, as far as the, if you have the cases where you do not have arbitration agreement, or the value is not that high, or then the your debtor is not a corporate company, and there are a lot of is not a corporate, and there are a lot of a lot of documents or a lot of issues that are to be proved, then the one option is, the only option is to go for trial, where if you feel that it is for sure that without documentary and oral evidence the issue cannot be decided, then go for trial. Otherwise, arbitration and this IBC section 9 is very effective. It is within the shortest possible, and it is quite efficacious remedies there. So summing up, we have the summary procedure under Order 37 for money recovery, which is by the courts. Then we have the ordinary suits. Then we have the Commercial Courts Act, where again we have we can file the commercial suits. Then as far as the tribunals are concerned, there is NCDRC is there. NCDRC is where you are able to establish that you are a consumer, like against the ESI, if you are going for recovery of the money either by the employer or the employee, so that the future which is paid, and they both are consumer, then can invoke the NCDRC. Then there is NCLT, which is going to be suspended for 1 year. We don't know, still the circular is not there, which clarifies from when and what will be the implications of it and what will be the procedure. Then we have the arbitration, which is there for the recovery.
Thank you, sir, for taking out your valuable time and speak to us on the impact of COVID on recovery of money under different laws. It has been an enriching and enlightening experience for us today. Thank you for acquainting us on the topic in the most lucid manner. On behalf of our team, we thank you so much. We would also like to thank all the viewers who had been a constant learner through this informative webinar. In the end, I would like to thank Nitesh sir, Hitakshi ma'am, Jyoti Bakshi ma'am in making the present webinar a success. Thank you so much.
We are most thankful to you, Shivani, for taking it to this way, and you were very nice in taking the questions, and Rajesh Rai sir has answered all the questions very calmly and took out his time from his busy schedule. Sir, we are thankful to you, and we are looking forward for more such informative webinars from you on some other different subjects. Thank you so much, sir.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.